Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you watching Lloyd's closed-circuit television presentation today, Thursday, November the 5th, 1981. My name's Gordon Begg, and I've got beside me here somebody better known to you, Anthony Brown. Morning, Tony.
Good morning, Gordon, and good morning, everybody.
And we've just caught the arrival of the Lord Mayor. Tony, can you come in now and tell us a bit about him?
Well, the Lord Mayor is, of course, the first citizen of London, Gordon, second only to the monarch in the city, Colonel Sir Ronald Gardner Thorpe. And like a lot of Lord Mayors, he's a member of Lloyd's. 7 Lord Mayors since 1973 have been names at Lloyd's.
And we're picking him up here with the chairman, Mr. Peter Green, and Mrs. Green, and Alec Higgins, deputy chairman, beside him there. And the chairman's leading him now onto the platform across Lime Street. And he's just been introduced to Mr. Tim Brennan,
who I think is the only member of Lloyd's committee to have ever played for the Barbarians. In 1891, the committee of Lloyd's were interested in the fact that the Mansion House was for sale, and there was some consideration of buying it in order to put Lloyd's there. It was not proceeded with, needless to say.
Now we are at the introduction of, or the welcome by the chairman to the Bishop of London, Right Reverend Graham Leonard. The party's proceeding onto the site.
There's some more members of the committee there. Mr. Frank Barber on the right, who was re-elected to the committee yesterday, and on his left, Alan Parry. On his right, Alan Parry and Henry Chester.
We're leaving the site for the moment, and as you can see in Lime Street, there's quite a crowd gathered who know that the Queen Mother will be arriving very shortly. Some people, I imagine, from the building and some just from the public.
Well, I don't know whether it's a coincidence, but it was November the 16th, 1952, when Queen Elizabeth laid the foundation stone of the present Lloyd's building, and November the 14th, 1957, when the Queen Mother herself opened this building.
And here we have the moment we've been waiting for, the arrival of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And there she is, being greeted by the Lord Mayor. She's in his patch now. And he in turn is going to present her to the chairman, Mr. Peter Green. There we are. And she's having a word with the chairman and moving on now to be introduced, to have Mrs. Green introduced to her. Deputy Chairman, Alec Higgins. But Her Majesty is talking now to Courtney Blackmore, Head of Administration. She will now, I think, be moving on, yes, to Mrs. Penelope Wyatt, Penny, the Chairman's PA. There we are. This is, I think, Leslie
Ferry, the Chairman's waiter.
Leslie Ferry, thank
yes.
you. That's where I will pick you up again, Tony. And he'll be leading the party, I think, for the rest of the performance. Now we're coming up to some more presentations. The Bishop of London, Right Reverend Graham Leonard. Beside him was Right Honourable Gordon Richardson, the Governor of the Bank of England, the two of them representing, I suppose, the temporal and spiritual heights.
And there's Henry Chester, now with his stick, that Her Majesty is talking to. And moving on to Alan Parry. Now to Frank Barber, who has met her before. He was presented on May 1979 at Chatham.
These are all members of the Redevelopment Committee, is that right, Tony?
I think so, yes, yes.
Yes, clearly the Queen Mother remembers having met him before, and as always, she's spinning that little cocoon of goodwill and ease around her, which is so difficult to do. There she is with Dennis Waters. She's wearing, I think, a silk coat with rather nice sort of puffed sleeves, a hat with ospreys, all in a kind of sea blue-green. That's Ian Barrett that she's talking to now. And finally, Jack Fielder. All these people have been very much concerned with the development of the site. And now she's on to the architect, Mr. Richard Rogers of Richard Rogers and Partners. I suppose if any one man is responsible for the look of the new building when it goes up in 5 or 6 years' time, it is this man, Richard Rogers.
Remarkably youthful man to have achieved so much in architecture already, to have already got that massive Pompidou Centre in Paris.
And this is Mr.
Achievement.
Jack Zunz of Obe Sarup and Partners, which he's talking to now. And then she's moving on now to the chairman of Bovis, who will be coming into a picture in a minute. No, sorry, that's Mr. Bathgate, who's the Lloyd's project coordinator. And next to him, the tall man, is Mr. Bernard Heafy, chairman of Bovis Construction, whose yellow hummingbird you would have seen on the outside of the site. We've got one more presentation before we have completed the round of those who've been responsible for, or will be responsible for, the building. And she'll be moving on to him any minute now. Yes, it's Mr. D.A. Anderson of Costain Construction, who are the subcontractors of the building. And of course, in the old days, the next thing that Her Majesty would be doing would be lowering a great stone plaque by means of chains and pulleys. But in this age of high tech, she's going to be pouring some cement. And that's what she's about to do now.
And then I'll ask you to pull this lever.
Oh, yes.
And that activates everything.
Yes.
Would you
Right,
like to...
quick.
Your Majesty, today those taking part are in two groups, namely those you see around us here on the site, in the street, and watching from the neighbouring buildings, and an even larger audience of some thousands of members of the Lloyd's market who are watching these proceedings on closed-circuit television in the underwriting room. That audience greatly looks forward to your joining them in the room after these proceedings. This is the fourth occasion on which we have had the joy and privilege of welcoming you to Lloyd's. Each has had a special significance for us and given us the opportunity to show you a little of the very great regard and affection in which you are held by us all. It is difficult to believe that it is only 24 years since, accompanied by Her Royal Highness the Princess Margaret, you opened the building we now occupy. This was our second home to be designed specially for underwriting. Those of us who were privileged to be present in 1957 were confident that the new room would meet our needs for the foreseeable future. We never dreamed that we would need to ask you so soon again to celebrate with us the start of construction of yet another Lloyd's. Nor indeed did it seem likely when you honored us by becoming an honorary member in 1974. The growth of the market during the latter part of the last decade has, however, made it essential for us to undertake this project. As you will see when you visit the room later this morning, we are already seriously overcrowded, and indeed some underwriters have had to be accommodated temporarily in what was the garage and is now known as the Yellow Submarine. It would be presumptuous to assume that we are better able to forecast the future than were our predecessors. In the light of their experience, however, we told the architect to design a building which shall be of such a flexible design as to provide scope for the maximum expansion of the underwriting room as and when it may arise. Moreover, whilst we believe that the meeting of underwriters and brokers in a single marketplace will continue to be a special and valuable characteristic of business at Lloyd's, we must be able to take full advantage of the facilities which the new electronic technology will provide during the coming decades. It is in these particular respects that Mr. Rogers, his partners, and their colleagues in Ove Arup and Partners have shown such great understanding of our needs. At Lloyd's, we have always been innovators. Innovation is probably the greatest single factor behind our success. This new building is a major innovation, and in consequence we believe that it will suit Lloyd's well and provide a fine home for the 9,000 to 10,000 men and women who regularly work in the market. I want to take this opportunity, if I may, to thank all those who have enabled us to be here today only 4 years after the committee decided to build a new Lloyd's. The authorities at the Guildhall, County Hall, and the Department of the Environment have been most helpful, and we were heartened to have received such enthusiastic support for the building's design from the Royal Fine Arts Commission. Thanks to the management contractors, Bovis Construction, and the various subcontractors, work below ground is now well advanced and on programme. It is therefore a source of great pleasure to us all that you are able to be with us today, Your Majesty, to mark the start of the construction of the main structure. Now, if I may ask you if you will commemorate this happy occasion by pouring concrete that will form part of the column that will stand beside the main entrance of the new Lloyd's.
Say my few words. I am very pleased, Mr. Chairman, to be at Lloyd's once again. It is almost 300 years since the earliest known reference to Mr. Edward Lloyd's coffee house was recorded, and some 200 years since your members took rooms for underwriting in the Royal Exchange. Little more than half a century ago, King George V opened the first Lloyd's building to be specially designed for your society. And as you have said, Mr. Chairman, it is only 24 years since I had the pleasure of opening your present underwriting room and building. Now, as an honorary member, I am indeed delighted to be associated with the next great event in your history. None of us can know what the coming decades hold in store, but I do congratulate you on commissioning and the architects on designing a building which is so inherently flexible as to be able to meet not only the foreseen, but hopefully also the unforeseen needs of your market. I'm especially happy to learn that a number of your old established rooms will be incorporated in the new building, and that it is planned to move the Bowood room so that it will continue to serve as your committee room in the future. I'm certain that your plan will provide Lloyd's with a fitting room in which your society will continue to flourish and prosper in the years ahead. You will also bring to the city a building over which her citizens may well argue, but of which I am confident they will have cause to be very proud. To mark this occasion, it now gives me the greatest pleasure to cast part of the keep column of the new building.
Ma'am, I must warn you that just after you, we have now lie down.
This is perhaps the dramatic highlight of the whole presentation, and the concrete's snaking its way down now. It's pouring. It's going from that hopper down to the base of the column.
Very nice, Your Majesty.
Below. Behind the Queen Mother is Sir Martin Gilliatt and her lady-in-waiting.
I think we can describe that as well and truly poured.
Well, it certainly went very well. I think concrete is a substance which you never know quite how pourable it's going to be, so there must have been moments of anxiety, I think, but it certainly went as you would wish it to. And now this is a silver hard hat being presented to Her Majesty by Mr. Heafy, the chairman of Bovis, the hard hat that everybody on the site working wears, and this is a silver one, suitably engraved. I think it's got somewhere on it the hummingbird, which I referred to before, and it will be another memento of the day for the Queen Mother to take back to Clarence House. Now, Her Majesty's having a last look at the site before she will return towards Lime Street and the present Lloyd's building. Here we are leaving the site platform and coming into Lime Street. And I think, if I know the lady, she's going to do a bit of walkabout in Lime Street.
I think Her Majesty does always enjoy talking to so many people on these occasions that I think at Chatham she spent an extra 45 minutes when she performed the opening there, talking to typists, secretaries, everybody inside.
Yes, I don't think she's easily controllable when it comes to meeting folk. And I say they all seem to be enjoying it so much. Well, there's where it all happened, and as you can see, the workman is at the bottom of the hopper there. There it is, the plaque commemorating her opening of the present building in 1957. No doubt will take her back to that day when she came with Princess Margaret for the opening ceremony. As I assume in 1957 she sort of opened it with a curtain or some such device. And now she's coming in, or will be coming into the building.
We shall see her. We may just see her greeted by the head waiter, Mr. Dennis Pressland, before she enters.
Largely responsible for all the running of the buildings and the new building. Well, we don't quite know that. We will keep it. We'll walk upstairs, but opposite. But what we do with Lloyd, I don't know. The bank might want it, the commodity markets. That's what quite sufficient. The old bridge of sides connecting the two buildings as well won't be replaced. We did think about having a bridge of one house. Mr. Conrad is the superintendent. He's responsible for the advertising where providing the services.
Busy times when we had
just on the box of where they originated, the long part, you'll see now they're crammed right up together.
next year Royal setting up weekly. We've been given illustrious.
And the party's passing a number of boxes on the way to the rostrum.
Passing the Merritt Dixie box there, I think, a very large box as you come in on the right.
I suppose it's more than possible, Tony, that the Queen Mother knows some of the underwriters here. I've met them previously, I've introduced them before.
I think so. I don't know whether she's been to this particular... I can't quite see whether she's stopped at a box or whether she's just talking to people who are standing there in the line. Now, coming up to the rostrum and the pulpit, which is the traditional place in the coffee house where the waiter called the kidney used to give the news of arrivals of ships. chairs immediately in front of the rostrum.
Directly above them, I think, is the bell, which will... And we don't quite see it yet, because it's out of picture at the top right.
You can just see the wrought iron which supports it.
Your Majesty, you gave us all great pleasure by marking the start of the main construction of the new Lloyds. As I explained, it was not practical for many people to be on the site. We did, however, arrange for members of the market to be involved by relaying the proceedings on the closed-circuit television, which I hope worked. I can only hope that this great gathering here were able to see and hear what went on. Now, amongst so many of our colleagues at Lloyd's, and I use the word "our" advisedly, bearing in mind that since 1974 you have been an honorary member, and it is a very special privilege and joy to welcome you in the room. Your interest and that of your family in our affairs are the source of pride and pleasure to us all. Recent years have not been the easiest for Lloyd's, but we have continued to be a very successful centre of world insurance and thereby be one of the city's most important earners of foreign exchange. We are confident that we will not only resolve recent difficulties, but also be able to make the changes necessary to ensure that the market maintains its position as the leader of world insurance. We are delighted that you are able to find the time to see us at work and to meet some of those upon whom the market's success depends. We are a far larger market than we were when you were last with us, both in membership and business transacted, and one of our greatest challenges is to learn how to preserve our individuality in spite of this growth. By being with us today, you give very visible support to our confidence in the future. May I now ask Your Majesty to accept a memento of this occasion. The jolly boat is identical to that given by Lord Nelson to his friend and colleague Thomas Atkinson in 1801. As you know, Admiral Nelson was a very good friend to Lloyd's, being closely involved in setting up our worldwide maritime intelligence service. The decanters are of 18th century Irish design, and I hope you will agree that these go well with the boat. On behalf of the committee, members, and all of us at Lloyd's, may this gift remind you of what is for us a very happy day, and more especially always be a token of the deep regard and affection that we all have for you.
I was delighted and relieved, Mr. Chairman, when a few minutes ago the routine bell signified good news. And now, to add to my pleasure, you've given me this really beautiful present. It is a special pleasure to me in my 7th year as an honorary member of Lloyd's to be here with you in the underwriting room where so many friends have miraculously survived and, I hope, prospered in the somewhat cramped conditions in which you operate. Just now, I took part in a ceremony to mark the beginning of a new era, which will mean a more spacious way of life for the underwriters, and will, I hope from my heart, bring success and happiness to Lloyd's, thereby maintaining the great contribution that your society makes to our national well-being. And finally, may I thank you with all my heart for this really beautiful gift. It will be a very constant reminder of my close association with Lloyd's, and I assure you it will always be among my most precious possessions. Thank you very much.
So it is well stuck.
Oh, I see. It's not a box.
That's it. This was made by the carpenters here.
It really is a beautiful artifact, and I think there's no doubt about the genuine pleasure that it's given to the recipient. The box made here at Lloyd's is a particularly nice bit of finished wood and metal. And we'll get a closer look at the jolly boat later, and I think Tony will tell us a bit more about the tradition. Now I'm handing over to Tony because the Queen Mother's meeting past chairman.
Well, I think that must be Sir Walter Barry that she's talking to, who she has met on many occasions before at Lloyd's. There's Mr. Paul Dixie, who is himself an example of the continuity of Lloyd's, because his father, Neville Dixie, was one of the committee presented to His Majesty King George V at the opening of the East India House building in the 1950s. Mr. Dixie was the first great travelling chairman of Lloyd's, the first one to go to the Far East, and many other places during his term of office. On his left, you can see Sir Havelock Hudson, and the tall figure she's now talking to, Mr. Ian Findlay, who wanted to go into insurance when he was first brought into the room at the age of 10, I believe. Sir Havelock, between him and Mr. Dixie, who's one of the few, if not the only chairman of Lloyd's who made 2 voyages around the world as a crewman in a merchant ship.
Do chairmen
Mr.
serve for a
Charles.
fixed term, Tony, or does it vary?
Excuse me just a moment, I just wanted to point out that I think is Mr. Charles Gibb. And on his right, the chairman of the Stock Exchange, Nicholas Goodison. I think she may be heading to see Mr. Raymond Porter.
Is that?
Yes, there he is. He's known as universally as Dickie Porter. This is the Secretan box. And he celebrated his 85th birthday 3 weeks ago. I suppose, if there is such a phrase, the father of the room. Very much loved and respected figure. He began underwriting, he began in the market in 1912 at a salary of £30 a year. And he's been 60 years in the same underwriting agency. The syndicate is 200 years old, which even by Lloyd's standards is quite historic. He was given the Lloyd's Silver Medal in 1978. And he's had more years on the committee than almost anyone, I think. Three periods of 4 years. Now, I think she's going behind the rostrum where Mr. Clifford Welch, the managing director of Lloyd's of London Press, is going to present to her Mr. Tony Lescombe, the Prestel editor, and Mr. David Burling, the casualty book clerk, and they're going to show her the loss book, which is the very historic book which contains all ship losses, the losses written in with a quill pen, and David Burling enters those every day. if there are losses, and at 4:30 he rules a red line under the losses for the day. But Her Majesty is going to be shown the loss book and also the Prestel machine. And Tony Lescombe is going to press 2 buttons to put the same loss, which is in the loss book, on display instantaneously on screens on the east coast of the USA, Australia, Hong Kong, Northern Europe. 30,000 terminals will instantaneously see that, what is going up there on the Prestel, and it's still done, of course, in Lloyd style in the old loss book with the quill pen at the same time.
Now, we never got a really good look at the jolly boat, so I hope we can have a close look at that while the party's going upstairs. Ah, here we are. There's the jolly boat and the 2, I must say, beautiful looking decanters with heart-shaped stoppers, which seem surely a very suitable sign for everybody's feelings to the Queen Mother.
Thomas Atkinson, who Nelson gave it to, it wasn't part of the ordinary Lloyd's treasure, was master of his flagship, the Elephant, at Copenhagen.
Well, we've got to the gallery now for the first time, and Her Majesty is having a look from a high-angle position, so to speak, down into the room. And we should be following her to our right, along the gallery to the far end.
She's now in the non-marine market in the gallery, Her Majesty, passing the Gardner Mountain and Cattle Cure box where Mr. Hughes Hallett is the underwriter. It's a box that specializes in jewelry and fine arts, which she may be especially interested in.
I would think by the end of the morning she must have talked individually to well over 100 people. I haven't counted, but it has been an extraordinarily high score.
Yes, indeed. The young brokers are so thick on the ground there that Her Majesty's not really getting very near to the boxes, is she?
No, she's kept out by the railing by the press of brokers.
But she is in the vicinity of Mr. Hall's box. Or in fact, I think she's now moved on to Mr. Miko. That is Mr. Miko on the right. He's third generation of a family at Lloyd's. His grandfather founded the syndicate in the early 1900s.
We're coming up now to the far end of the room.
There's one of the lady waiters on the left, which we're talking about, Gordon.
Oh, yes. now we're going to see another presentation. This time it's flowers, and it's from Miss Elsie Saunders, who's worked for 42 years for Lloyd's. I think she's something of a backroom lady, isn't she, Tony?
She works in the Lloyd Policy Signing Office, I believe, so I think that is a...
So she may not be well known to many of the...
She's certainly being a front room lady today.
She certainly is. Yes, there's a particularly happy shot of the two ladies and their bouquet of flowers. Last wave before we finally lose sight of Her Majesty. What they call a special smile for our cameraman. For the next 5 years or so, a whole new building will be rearing up on the site on top of the royal load of concrete. And we'll all watch its growth, I think, with interest, and we'll remember today, November the 5th, and the gracious part played by the lady who honored us with her presence.